Hello, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Just do a quick mic check. Let me know. Hey, all right. Oh, what's up, Jim? Jim Bob, Bob the Jim. All right. So today we're going to strictly just focus on React. Okay. uh, so I want to talk about a little bit more about React components, and then if address any questions that you might have. But I want to start getting into state. I've been talking about wanting to get into state, and I want to talk about state now. So this is going to be very React heavy. So if you want, take notes as usual. But yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. And also today's Friday, so that's the end of this React module. Again, this week was just kind of like showing you how React works a little bit, stuff like that. Next week, though, it's going to be super React heavy. If you guys remember, we were doing that HTML form and stuff. We're going to do that now using React. There's going to be a lot more uh, more development next week. Okay, we're going to actually build an entire, um, uh, very simple website using React. So we're going to just apply everything that we've learned and discussed up till now in order to accomplish that. And then hopefully you can start to see, the power behind React if you haven't already. Okay, so in the last session, we were talking about, suppose that you got this data like this, right? So you just had an array of JavaScript objects, you know. How we got this data doesn't matter. Maybe you got it from an API or something, or it was just, hard coded into the application, something. Now I went on this whole talk about, you know, the math definition of mapping, going from one set to the other. Okay. And Jim had asked for, what's another way of doing it without using higher order functions, right? And so this is a total valid way of doing it, right? This is a total valid way. Um, the only problem, right, with something like this is that we're not using higher order functions. Now, why am I pushing you to use higher order functions? Well, the reason why is because it gives you tons of flexibility. You can swap in and out different, ways of doing things. So by using higher order functions, it just allows you to first not have to write so much code. So that's always a good thing. And two, it just gives you flexibility, right? That's kind of what we want. We want a little bit of flexibility. And we want to take advantage of the implementations that browsers are going to have for certain higher order functions like sort, map, reduce, filter, these kinds of higher order functions that are part of the array namespace. If we can take advantage of those, they could be faster than something that we could implement ourselves. Not always, but it's a possibility. Okay. Now, sometimes we will need to implement our own just because it's faster than the default stuff that JavaScript gives us. And so, those things do happen, but again, you shouldn't start optimizing too early in your build. Okay. And so the entire thing of using the map was that we wanted to create a collection of components because in React, you can render an array in React. The only thing is that the elements just need to be some kind of React node, right? That's the type, okay? Now a JSX element that's like this, right? This is a React component. Is something that is totally valid to be rendered, that React can render. it's totally valid. So all we're trying to do is transform this JavaScript object into a valid React component like this. And we created a collection, so our array, and then we told React, hey, can you render this for us? And then React took care of that. Okay. So Sam Lee's saying that states is very important. That's an interview question. Yes. Yeah, so this is basic knowledge of React. So what we've already talked about was props. So here's an example of props. Okay. These are properties that the movie component can accept. Now, key is a property that React is going to use. Okay, so whenever you're using collections like this of React components, React always wants you to supply it with a unique key because it's going to use that key in order to know when a specific component updates, because React is basically keeps track of the state of your application and your components. So when one of your components changes, right, when the state changes, React will react to that and redraw the entire component. Now, React won't re-render the entire application. It will only re-render the component that whose state has changed. This is a huge benefit because it's only ever re-rendering small components at a time. This can be a dramatic performance improvement in applications. Okay. All right. So this was the result of our code that we wrote. We had, so this entire thing, this part right here is a movie component. The movie property that we fed it contained the title, contained the genre and the year. Okay, and then it rendered it. Now it looks ugly and stuff like that, but that's not the point. The point is feeding it data and then it drawing something. So this is how we were able to use props in order to accomplish this. So we use props. We basically passed a JavaScript object to the movie component, and then the movie component knew what to do with it. Now that part may be a little confusing, so I want to try and do it another way. Okay. So let's suppose, maybe to make this a little bit easier, what if in props, okay, what if in for movie component, we pass in every individual piece. Now this is a bad idea. We probably shouldn't do this, but let's pass each individual piece one at a time, okay? And then we're going to see why you'd want to just, pass an entire object in when it makes sense. In this case, it makes sense to do that. Okay. So imagine we had props. Instead of saying props movie.title, we just said props.title, props.genre, and props.year. So we don't have an object that will contain these three properties together, okay? So we don't have that now. So this is going to compile real quick. And when you see over here, it should be blank because we haven't fed it values for these properties, okay? Oh, 3D can't be here? Okay, no worries. See you on Monday. Okay, so the props movie no longer exists. Okay, movie is expecting us to send each individual property individual like this. Okay, so now what we need to do is we got to say something like this. We got to say title. Okay. And we need to use some JavaScript because this is in the JavaScript world. And right now we're in the JSX world. So in order to go into the JavaScript world, we use the curly braces. That's the syntax. This allows us to escape into JavaScript. So I can say Bob dot title. So there's the title. The next thing is the genre. So I'll say genre. Again, going into the JavaScript world, escaping using the curly braces. Say Bob dot genre. And then here we say year is equal to Bob dot year. And we save. we get the same outcome. The difference is that now we have to pass every piece individually. Okay. Versus before we just sent the entire thing. Okay. So I'm gonna rename this so it makes a little bit more sense. Call this React movies collection or something like that. And then here we'll call this the actual movie data. Okay, so that's the movie data, a particular movie data. And then we're passing each from movie data, we're grabbing the title. So this is a movie data, this is part of it. And we're just grabbing the title, genre, and year, and we're passing it. Now remember, we're inside of a loop, so it's going to happen for every single movie that we have in our movies array. Okay, now we're just going to pass it one property at a time. Okay, so as you can see, in the first example, we were able to just send the whole thing in. Now we're sending it piece by piece. Okay, we save and we get the same result. Okay. Okay. So let's suppose, can mapping or the loop take place inside the component movies? So we send the JS object and wrap it inside movie. So mapping, a map is a higher order function that works on arrays. So when you're talking about, could we send the movies to the movie component? The answer is, the way we've structured it here is no, because this component only knows how to render a particular movie, just one movie. It doesn't render all of them. Now, what you could do, which is maybe what you're trying to get at, is we could actually create a component called movies.jsx. So this is called the movies component. So we say import everything as React from React. We'll create a function, call it movies. This is going to take some props. We're going to return something. Right now we'll return undefined just for now. Okay. Now let's go to our app here. So we have the data. Again, we got the data somehow. Right now, doesn't matter. We got the data from an API or somewhere. Okay, doesn't matter. But we have this data now. So one option which you could do is you could actually create a component, right? We didn't. We have to export this. So export default movies. Okay, there it goes. So in here, we could actually grab movies, like so. So let's import it. Say import movies from components / movies. Okay. And what we could do is we could pass it the actual movies. Now I'm gonna call it collection here, just so we're not getting too confused with the verbiage here. And we'll just pass in movies. So now this movies component, you pass it the movies, all right, I'm passing as a property called collection, and we're gonna pass all of these movies into it. Okay, so we no longer need the movie component here. We can then pass that logic over into this movies component and let the movies handle how to draw this. So for example, here, we can say, we'll put everything inside of a div. Okay. Now remember, here I passed it as collection. So the prop that I need to grab is props.collection. Okay. I know that's supposed to be an array, so I can say map on it. And map what? Map a movie. I need the index too. This is something you can grab. You can grab the index. Okay, remember, this is my this is going to be my function, the function that transforms, that's going to help me map from one set to something else. So I'm going to return movie. That's not going to do it for me. Okay. Import movie from, let's bring in our component. There's movie. Okay. We have our movie here. Because we're going to be creating a collection and asking React, hey, can you draw this? We need to feed each component that's going to be in the collection a unique identifier. Now here I'm just going to just use the index because that's unique to this collection. Okay. And then movie was expecting title, genre, and year. So I got to do title equals movie.title, genre, movie.genre, and then year, movie.year. Hit save. There we go. Okay, so now if we look at app, it's gotten a lot cleaner. None of that logic of how to render a movies is part of the app component. The logic has now been pushed over to another component called movies that will specialize in how to draw the data, which is inside its collection. Okay, because remember, I passed it as a collection. But I could pass it as movies. To me, it makes more sense. But I'm just trying to show you that the name doesn't matter. As long as the component that you're trying to pass it into, it's consistent. So here I have to call it movies. Notice how it says cannot read property of undefined because collection is no longer defined. We now call it movies. And then the red arrow goes away. Okay, so as long as you understand that, you should be fine. Okay, now, so now that we have that, you can see it's rendering here. Movies, this new component that we created, it's right here under components, created movies. Now movies is responsible for drawing, right? So we've pushed the logic and the responsibility of how to draw something to another component. This is a good thing. This is actually a very, very good thing, okay? So hopefully that answers your question, is can mapping be inside of a component? And the answer is yes, but you need to be careful, right? Movie is singular, so it's kind of like it's suggested, it's implied that this only knows how to render a movie. But if you create a component called movies, it's suggested that it knows how to handle more than one movie, right? And so you have to just be careful of how you name your components and make sure that the naming makes sense. Singular and plurals implies something, so be careful of how you do that. Okay, very good. So right now, movies, okay, this data is just being passed in. Okay, it's being passed in from whoever calls movies. Okay. That's what's happening right now. Okay. Now, just imagine for a second, okay, this is how we're going to get into states. Just imagine for a second that movies, given the data, was also responsible for being able to not only draw the movies that it was given initially, but let's say we wanted to like not look at Inception. We wanted to remove it. Okay, and you need to keep track of that, right? So how can we do that? Right, because we need to keep track of state. Oh, I remove hangover. I remove law-abiding citizen, right? We need to keep track of this stuff. So how can we do that? Right, and so this is where states is going to come into play. Okay, so with React, we handle states by using something called a hook. Now, a hook is basically a function call that we do that will bind this component to React's like internal engine and let it know that, hey, this component that we have has some kind of state. Okay, and you can tell it whatever you want to keep track of. It can be just a number, it can be just a string, or it can be an object. Okay, it doesn't matter. You can give it whatever you want. Okay. And then from there, every time we change the state, React knows to re-render. Because if we don't re-render, we're not going to see any changes. So we'll see an example of that. So let's suppose that movies was supposed to keep track of the state. Okay. So we want to be able to keep a track of the state for movies. Now, how do we do that? So the way you do that is with something called React.useState. Okay, it's a function. So this returns a stateful value and a function to update it. Now notice that the return type is this really weird thing. It's actually an array, but it's an array with only 2 elements. Right now, the first value here is undefined, and the second value is this thing called React.dispatch. Okay. Now this dispatcher is how you're going to tell React that the state for this component is going to change. And then if the values are different, then React will know to re-render this component, else it will not re-render. Okay. So we can pass it something like, let's say we start off with an empty array right here. It's empty for now. Okay, so that's the state. It's empty. So this returns something. If we see the return type here, this is it looks kind of weird, but this is returning after the colon right here. It's returning an array with two elements. Okay. It now knows that this is the first. It's no longer undefined because we're passing it an initial state of an array, but we didn't tell it what type, so it's going to assume it's any, comma. And then the second element in this array is this dispatcher. Okay. So what's really weird is that when we'll call this something, we'll call it state, for example, is equal to. If you hover over state, this is an array. Okay, it's really weird. Okay, it's an array. The first element is your actual state object. The second element is the actual dispatcher. It's the function, the setter. So you know, like in Java, you have a getter and you have a setter. So you can imagine that this is like the getter, right? This is the raw data, and this here is the setter. So this is how we would update this value if we ever need to change it. So the way it should work is you would have something like const, and we'll have like value is equal to state at 0. That's the first thing, right? This is your actual value. This is your actual state right here. I call this state, so I'm running out of words to use. So I'm just going to call it value. And then we can have the other one called set value or set state. Usually we just call it set state. Okay. This is going to be equal to state at 1. This looks really weird. Okay, this looks really weird. Okay. However, let's do something here. Okay, let's do something. So I'm gonna have this state, and I'm gonna or the value here. This is our actual value. I'm gonna replace the movies with that value. I'm gonna hit save. Okay. Okay. Now it's saying that it cannot read this property, so let's refresh it. Okay. Now, right now, our state is showing that it's undefined. So we can actually do like console.log here, value. Okay. And let's open up our log here. And let's just see what's happening. Okay. Let's refresh this. Boom, boom. Okay. It should show that it's empty here. So yeah, it's empty. Okay. So what's happening right now? Because you see right here, the array is oh, I'm sorry. It is wrong. So we got to remove it from props because we're no longer going to read it from props. We're grabbing it from value. So props is no longer needed. Okay, error's gone. So the value here is empty. Now, that error sometimes happens when you're using Next.js, but I forgot we're not using Next.js right now. Okay, so you see the array is empty. Okay, so that's for the value. We're no longer going to use props for now. Okay, so we have this. Cool. And right now it's empty. So okay, so right now it's empty. As you can see right here, it's empty. However, remember that in our props, okay, we're receiving movies from app. Okay. So one thing that we can do is we can say set state props.movies. Okay. And let's just see what happens. Okay. Now we have an issue here, right? Because it makes sense, right? That's like, okay, well, we want to update the state now, right? But React is obviously complaining. Okay. And what's the problem here? Look at this. So first we had nothing, then we had 8. Okay? And then we had 8 again. And it just keeps calling console.log. What's going on? Right? What's the problem? What's going on? Why is it happening? It says too many re-renders. React limits the number of re-renders to prevent an infinite loop. Okay? So what happened? When you call set state like this, it's going to cause a re-render. Okay? When that happens, this entire function gets called again. And what happens? Okay, what happens? We call set state again. And we call it again. And we call it again. And you see what's happening? We call it, it renders, forcing it to re-render, so it calls set state again, and now we have this big problem. Okay? So you can't just put set state anywhere. Okay, we cannot just update the state like this all the time. You should only do it when the state needs to change. See, right now, it doesn't make sense for us to do it like this, okay? An action should happen, then we invoke a set state to update the state, okay? So what we should do is, since we have the data that's coming from props, we should initialize our set state to props.movies, okay? Because we know that has data, that's our array. So hit save, that'll happen. And it didn't re-render again because we haven't updated state. Okay. Okay. All right. So now I want a way to be able to, like, let's say, delete something. I want to be able to delete, you know, I want to be able to I want to be able to click a button and just delete the first one. So let's try to do that. So I have a button here. I'm gonna call this delete. Okay. So there's a button. Every time I click this, I want to delete one of these movies. I'll start from the beginning. Okay, I want to be able to delete something. Now that's an example of changing the state, right? Because when we hit delete, we need to remove one element from the array, and then we need to redraw it. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we need to be able to listen for the click. Okay, so with React, what's really cool is that the on-click listeners that are part of the buttons are exposed here. So we can say on-click. You see that? On-click. And then you set it equal to, and then now we have to write our JavaScript. So to do that, we use the curly braces like that. Now we're in the JavaScript world. And then here you can write a function. Okay, this function will be executed when the button gets clicked. So let's just write a basic function here. Again, we're going to use the lambda, the arrow function. We'll do something like that. And we'll just say console.log clicked. Okay, hit save. Now look at the right side. Every time I click this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Clicking. See, now it's clicking. So we've been able to add a listener to this on click. So now we know when this button gets clicked. Okay. Does that make sense? You guys okay with that? Okay. Okay. All right. So the next thing is, now that we know how to listen for the button clicks, we now just need to remove. All right, our goal is just to remove the very first item in our array. Okay. So let's do that. We're gonna say we're gonna look at our current state. Again, we're gonna change this, but for now, let's just let's just follow this right here. So I'm gonna say value. So value is our actual state right now. So if value dot length is greater than 0, then we have something to delete. Okay. If it's if it's not 0, we can't do this. Okay. So what are we gonna need to do? So how do you delete something from an array? So one way you can do this is using something called slice. So you say value dot slice. Okay. And it says no, is it splice? Let's see, array slice. Should be slice. I'm not sure why it's saying. Yeah. So here, as you can see, if you have an array here, if you say 2, okay, so that's index 2, so 0, 1, 2. It oh, we removed the first 2. Okay, yeah. So here I just want to remove the just the first one. So I'll say slice 1. Okay. Now this should return, if I remember correctly, this should return yeah, a new array. Okay. So I'm gonna say we'll call this const. We'll call this new value is equal to, and we're just going to remove the very first element. Okay. And for now, I'm just going to log this console.log new value. Okay, just for now. I'm gonna hit the button. Now you'll notice that we have 8 elements, but now it has 7. And you'll notice that the Star Wars one is now gone. Now, if I click it again, we get the exact same result because we haven't updated the state. We're not keeping track of anything. So now what we should do is we can say, okay, so we want to say set state to this new value. This new array has the Star Wars removed. Okay, so we hit save. And so when I click delete, we're going to delete the first item in our array, and then we're going to update the state, and then React's going to react to the state change and re-render this component. See, now Star Wars is gone. I can keep clicking this, and I can start deleting one at a time. All right, and then now if I click delete, nothing happens because there are no longer any items in my list to delete. Okay. Now let's go back to this and let's try and clean this up because this looks kind of this looks terrible to look at. Okay. So in order for us to be able to do this a lot easier, because this looks terrible, is we can actually take advantage of something that ES6 gives us, and that's called array destructuring. So ES6 array destructuring. So with array destructuring, it works as follows. The syntax is you use the square brackets like you would before, and then you create your identifiers in the order in which you want to pull out elements from the array that's on the right. Remember, useState's going to return the array or the data. Let's be a little bit more specific. useState's going to return the state. That's the first element. Then the second element is going to be your dispatcher. So here we can just call this movies. It makes more sense to call it movies now because we know it's going to be movies. And then it's going to return the dispatcher or the setter. And it's, you know, it's It's pretty standard to call this set and then whatever your state is. So in this case, my state is about movies. So we're going to say set movies. And so this is the syntax. You see how cleaner that is? It basically did what we did before, but this is a shorthand notation for doing that. So now all I have to do is just update my code. So wherever I saw value, I'm going to change this to movies. And here, when we set it, we're going to say set movies. So I'm going to change this, and then like that. And then here, we can even do a shorthand here. We can just grab this, replace it there, and there we go. So if movies.length is greater than 0, movies.slice1, and we set that. So set movies, movies.slice1. Because slice 1 is going to remove the first element in your array, and it's going to return a brand new array. It doesn't mutate the original array. It creates a new one with the first element deleted. So hit save. Now we're back here. So you delete, 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 delete. Okay. And so this is how we can keep track of state using something like this. Okay. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that? About how state works? Now again, state can be anything. Okay, it can be a string, it could be a number, or it can be an object. In this case, we're using an array, right? But it can literally be anything. Okay. Now remember, when you use this the useState hook, this is called a hook. Okay, you don't have to provide it with some default value. Okay, here we're using the default value just because the data is actually going to be coming from app, and it's getting pushed to movies. Okay, now I told you that the component will re-render when the state changes. So if I go here and I say console.log movies rendering, this is a movies component. If I hit save, you'll see it says movies rendering. Right, so let me restart this. This says movies rendering. When I click delete, it renders again. It renders again. See, it's re-rendering because the state has changed. So when the state has changed, this return needs to get called again because something changed. React doesn't entirely know where in your return something changed, but it's just going to assume that your return has a dependency on the state, so it wants to redraw. This return, remember, is going to return the quote unquote HTML, okay, of for our component. So we need to redraw, right? We need to redraw. And it makes sense because the movies now, after I click delete, the way it looked at when I clicked the button is out of date. So when the set movies gets called and we update the state, we actually have to redraw so we get the most up-to-date movies. Now what's really cool about this is that movies is a child of app, okay? And the entire application does not re-render. So I'm going to say console.log app rendering, And I'm going to refresh this whole thing. So it says app rendering, which makes sense because the app renders before movies. You can see, here we go. So we're calling this, then we're going to call movies. Okay, then movies renders. Okay, that's why it says movies rendering. Now when I change the state, app rendering it doesn't render again. The parent doesn't render. Only the component whose state has changed will get re-rendered. See? App rendering never renders again. So if we were to think of this as a tree, we have our index here. This is our index component. Okay. Index component has a child, and that's app. Okay, and then app has a child, which is movies. Okay, and then in movies we have many children, right? Because that's the array. We could have 0 to many movie components. Okay, now movies has some state. Okay, so movies has some state. When the state changes, React knows, because you use the hook, use state. Okay, so then React knows to basically, I don't know how to do this, but this is supposed to be an eyeball. Okay, this is an eyeball. React knows to now watch this component. That's basically what you did. When you said use state, you're asking, hey, React, I need you to watch this component. If I ever call the dispatcher, which we named set movies, okay, this right here is the dispatcher. If we ever call the dispatcher set movies, then React will we'll just take this component from this tree and just cause it to re-render. So it does a re-render. And it doesn't touch app or index, any of the previous components that came before. It won't touch it because this state has nothing to do with them, right? So you can imagine that when you want to change just a part of your website, and only a part of your website is updating or changing its state, React can isolate those changes to that particular, we call them components, and it'll just have that redraw itself. Now, how does that look? We can actually see that in action. So we go here and we open up under the dev tools, we open this up, open this up, open this up. Okay, let's refresh this. That way we get everything back as the way it was. Okay, look at that. We have all of our divs here. Okay, this one's a Star Wars one. This one's a Frozen one, Space Jam, etc., etc. Now watch this. This website doesn't refresh. This whole DOM's not going to refresh. Just pay attention to the stuff that's actually redrawn. You'll see it flash. I want to hit delete. Whoa. Did you see that? It flashed. Do it again. Whoa. Interesting. See? Only the parts that are changing is it flashing. Look at button. Button is not even changing. It's just right there. All the other ones are changing. Boom. And there's nothing else, right? Somewhere to delete. So you can kind of see how that's working. Now, there are some extensions here that you can use. So you can go click on extensions and then look for where do you go? Get extensions for, I think it's here. Yes, and then here you just type in React developer tools and look for this extension. Just install it. So you get it and then boom, you're done. Okay. You might have to reload your your browser, so you shut it down and turn it back on or whatever. And then you're gonna get a couple things. Number one, you're gonna get this extension icon right here. When you click on this, it's going to just tell you whether or not the website that you're on is using React, right? So if I go to like Home Depot, okay, this is a website, and look at that. This page is using production build of React, checkmark. So Home Depot's using React. Hey, that's pretty high tech, right? So Home Depot's using React. Let's say we go to Walmart.com. I think that's the website. Walmart is using React. How about that? Okay. What else? Say the NYT, the New York Times. Okay. They are also using React. Geez, who isn't using React nowadays, right? Okay. So it's a website that's probably not using React. Yeah. Home Depot was an interesting one because if any of you guys were here last year when I did this, when we went on the Home Depot website, the home page didn't use React, but the shopping cart portion used React. I think Home Depot was doing a slow rollout. They were just trying if React was going to be a good fit for their business, and then Pizza Hut. Let's try that. Pizza Hut. Oh, you're gonna make me hungry. PizzaHut.com, I think that's the website. Okay, and they're not using React. Okay, they're not using React. Beautiful. So if you click on this, it's saying this page doesn't appear to be using React. Okay, but that may not be the case. The entire thing. React can be used in just parts of it. And it's usually where you're dealing with things like state. So let's click on order now. Hopefully not everybody starts to get hungry. Click order now. Okay, it still does not using React. Let's say it's let's go to the menu. Okay, let's say it's delivery. Whatever. Dang it. Okay, carry out. Dang it. Okay. How do I just I just wanna like let's build a pizza or something. I don't know. Create your own. Why not? Dang it. Okay. Domino's I think is okay. Domino's. Do they use React? They're pretty high tech actually. So they actually might be using React. Okay, they're not using React. That's interesting. I want to know the shopping cart. Does the shopping cart use React? That's what I care about, right? It's a shopping cart because that is a possibility. Sometimes they do. Let's do delivery. Why does everybody want my location? Okay, all right, whatever. Dang, I just want to create a shopping cart. All right, that doesn't matter. But more likely than not, if a website doesn't use React, part of it could be using React just because it's stateful. It makes sense when you have a shopping cart. It makes sense that it makes sense that you might want to use a state just in a particular location, and maybe React is the best way of doing that. That's a possibility. Of all the pizza websites, only Mountain Pizza uses React. Like I said, the entire website may not be built with React. However, a part of it could. The best example I had was the Home Depot, but I guess they switched. Now the entire website is maybe Lowe's. Let's try Lowe's. Lowe's.com. They're a big competitor with Home Depot, so I imagine they're probably using React too. Yeah, okay, yeah, they're using React. I'm telling you, React is everywhere, right? So React is everywhere, but it may not be on every part of the website. You got to keep that in mind. It may not be part of the entire website. So, for example, if we go to like careers, that may not be in React, right? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Okay, so it looks like their career section is not in React. They're probably using Angular or just vanilla HTML. That's possibility. But when you're dealing with items and adding things to a shopping cart, removing things from a shopping cart, it makes sense that you would use React or something that's stateful. It doesn't have to be React, but it could be. So let's go shop now. I want to add this to see. This is all I wanted to do is I wanted to get here. Right? We have a quantity. Yeah, it shows add to cart. Boom, there's my shopping cart. Go continue. Let's view the cart. Okay, here's the cart. Right? We need to keep track of the state, right? We need to know how many items are in a shopping cart, right? And then we want to just simply just delete something, right? So here I can manually say, oh, I'm gonna change it to 1. And then boom, it updates the state. Now this changes, right? So you can see how you can use states in order to, build a shopping cart like this, right? Because this has a lot of state information. This right side, the order summary, depends on the state of this left side, what's actually in your shopping cart. Okay. Now in our example, this tiny little example that we have here, it's just like movies, and we're just deleting stuff. Okay, but you can always kick it up a step further. So let's try that. Let's try and do that. Let's use our state and copy Lowe's shopping cart example there. Okay, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna create a shopping cart dot JSX. shopping cart. Return undefined for now. Okay, and then we got to export this. So export default shopping cart. Okay. Cool. And then in app, instead of using the movie stuff, we will now use our shopping cart. Okay, we'll go over here. Then we're going to import it. So import our component, import shopping cart. There we go. Then we go over here. It's blank. No shopping cart. Okay. Okay, so in shopping cart, nothing was returned. Okay. So here, let's just do a div. Oops. Let's just say shopping cart. There you go. Done. Okay, so there's our shopping cart. So let's suppose that our shopping cart, you can just type something in and then it'll magically find the item and put it in your shopping cart. Let's say that's what we want to do. So first what we need is an input field. Okay. And again, remember, like, was it like 2 weeks ago we were doing the HTML stuff? We can use something called a placeholder. There it is, right there. That's the attribute there. What are we gonna put? Item name. Right? There you go. So in here we can type something in like tools, right? And then when I click a button and say add to my shopping cart, right? Okay. So let's create a button too. Button. Call this add. Okay. There's a little shopping cart. So there's tools, item name, whatever, and then we can add it. Okay. So we need to keep track, right? We need to keep track of these things. So how do we do that? What did we just talk about? We use state, right? So let's create our state objects. So here we're going to call this we'll call this items. And then because we need the second element's going to be our dispatcher, we'll call it set items, right? Because it's pretty common to just call it set and then whatever your state's called. So in this case, items, set items. Is equal to React.useState. There it is. And you can pass it some default stuff. So it makes sense in our case that we start off with an empty shopping cart. There we go. We have an empty shopping cart. Okay. And then all I want to do, keep it simple, is I just want to have here, right? I want to just, render my item. Like what's in my shopping cart or whatever. I was like, okay, so how do we do that? Well, again, this is an array. This items is going to be an array. Okay? So I need to go into my into the JavaScript world. So I need to escape from JSX. So I use the curly braces. Now I'm just going to do items dot map. Use the map function again. So I want to map a particular item. And the second argument that a map function gives me is the index. Again, whenever you're dealing with a collection, you need to have a unique key. Now, usually if you got this from a database, for example, like on Amazon, Amazon has a database of all the items. Those items are usually given a unique key, a unique ID. That's the product ID. If you had that, you could feed that to React's key. Because I don't have something like that, I'm just going to use the index. It's not a good practice, but that's what we're going to do for now. Okay. Now what do I want to return? For now, I'm just going to say return, and we'll just do a p tag, okay? And I want to just put inside the p tag my shopping item. So again, we're in the JSX world because I use the p tag. So now to escape the JSX world, I have to use these curly braces. You see it turns blue. So I'm just typing item. Right now, this is going to be an array of strings. Okay. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see. Okay. Now remember, this p tag is going to be part of a collection, because remember, map goes from one array to another array. So because we're going to render a collection, or we're going to have a collection of components, React wants you to assign a key to each individual one. The lazy way to do it is just give it the index and just call it a day. Okay, that's one way. Again, if the item had like an ID associated with it that was unique, you would feed it into there, because that's actually way better. For now, let's just do it like that. We're gonna hit save, and then we have nothing there. So there's nothing there. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to know when the button is clicked. So to do that, as we learned earlier, you say on click, and you can give it a function. You say equals, and again, I'm in the JSX world. I need to escape and go to the JavaScript world. So I'm going to use the curly braces. Notice that they turn blue. Okay. Now in here, I just need to supply it a function. Okay. Just supply it a function. So I'm going to build a function here. I'm going to just use an arrow function like this. And then I'm just going to say console.log add clicked. Okay. So now, oops. Go here, go to console, clear all that stuff up. Click on add, says add clicked. Okay, so we have the clicking. Not too bad. Beautiful. Okay. Now what's the next part here? Okay, what's the next part here? The next part is I need to get the data from input. Okay, I need to get the data from input. Okay. How do I do that using React? How do I do that? Well, the way you do that is called usually when you're dealing with a UI library, it's generally going to support something called data binding. Okay, data binding. So the way data binding works is there is an object that you can feed into one of the UI elements, and whenever you need to grab a hold of the reference of that thing, you use that. So you can actually get also information about when something gets updated. Okay. So we do that with React using ref. I'm saying const. I'm gonna call this my item input is equal to, and we're going to use another hook. So React.use ref. Okay. Okay, and that's it. Then in React, this is unique to React. There is a special attribute called ref. Okay, and you feed it the ref that you build on top. This allows you to keep a reference to this thing. Because remember, when this gets compiled or transpiled into HTML, you no longer have access to it, right? There are ways of doing it, but the best approach is to, keep things in the React world. So one way you can do is you can create a reference to this input, or anything really. Okay, and here I'm just going to create a reference to this input. I just called it item input because that makes sense. Okay. You could also sometimes people will call it whatever the component is, input. That's the component here, input, and they'll call it ref. Okay, that's another way you can do it. Okay. Now the reason why I need this ref is because I need the value. I need the value. I need to be able to get this text. So when I type in something like tools, and I click add, I need to get access to this string that's inside of input. Now, how do we do that? Well, now that we have the ref, we can say input ref dot current, and then current what? Well, the current element. Since this element is an HTML input, one of the properties that we can use is called value, and the value will give us whatever you inputted inside. So I'm going to say const, I'm going to call this input value is equal to our ref dot current dot and then value. Okay. Now I'm just going to log this to the console. Console.log input value. Okay. And I'm going to display this when I click the button. So I'm going to hit save. Clear this up. It says tools. I'm going to hit add. Now it says tools. Right? Because this currently says tools. If I change this to say, I don't know, a wrench. You need a wrench. Click add. Now it says wrench. So see, now my button has a reference to this input field. Now I can get the data by calling value on it. So what does this mean? Well, now that I have the value, what can I do? Well, I can add it to my set items here. Okay. So how do we do that? So what we can do is, you say something like, well, all right. So here's another thing about React. So when you're dealing with React state, you should never transform the old data. React actually wants you to make a copy of the old data and then mutate that. And then you submit that to the set state. So the idea here is that if we want to push an item to our array here, right? Remember, it's an array. We need to actually construct a new array. So we call this const new items is equal to, and the way you make a copy in JavaScript using ES6 syntax is using something called a spread operator. So I want to make it known this is going to be an array. If I use 3 dots, this means copy and then items. So new items is going to have a copy of all the elements inside of items. This is an easy way to do this. So this is using ES6. It's called the spread operator. Now that I have that on this new array, I say new items dot push the input value. Okay. Okay. So now that I've done that, I now need to tell React, hey, the items have now changed. They look like this now. So you say set items, new items. Give it the new data. So you cannot use the old stuff. You always have to create a brand new copy and then you set it. Don't worry about memory this, memory that. React has some internal caching. It has an internal system that actually, even though you're creating new copies, React, there's some like magic that happens that it will make sure that it's not consuming more memory than it has to. In any other language, this looks dumb. But it's just like, well, you have a reference to the object, just mutate it, right? But React doesn't work that way. Anytime you're going to change the state of any of your stateful data, you have to make a copy, mutate that, and then tell React that this is now the new state. You should not be mutating the previous state. Okay, always make a copy, mutate the copy, and then set that as the new state. Okay, we're gonna hit save now. So I'm gonna hit add. Now it says wrench. Cool, right? Because remember, this now has something to draw, right? So let's check it out. So here, go to elements, root, div. There's our p tag, and it has wrench. I can type something else. I can type in I don't know, tools, whatever. Hit add. Boom, boom. Look at that. It appended a new element. So React is mutating the DOM for us, right? That's what React is doing. Okay. So that's why it's important to understand what React is actually doing. Okay. What React does is it manipulates the DOM Okay, this is called the DOM, the document object model. This is a tree. It's going to manipulate this. However, it manipulates it in such a way that when your components change its state, you don't have to redraw the entire tree. React will just be like, hey, we're just going to update this little element over here. Whether that means removing it or updating the contents depends on the situation. But React knows, which is why we need to supply it a key, that when a particular item changes, it isolates the change to that location. Okay? That's what makes React so powerful. The whole website doesn't have to update. Only particular locations, only particular components, those things will get updated. Okay? Cool. Very cool. All right. So it would be nice that after I hit add, that the input gets cleared. Okay? It'd be cool if we could do that. So if I remember correctly, you should be able to say, so once we grab the input there, we should be able to say input ref current value is equal to blank. So after we hit add, I want to just so let's start from the beginning. I'm gonna put a wrench in, hit add, and there you go. The input is now cleared. Okay. So we don't see wrench again. Right there. And we can type something else. I don't know, hammer, add, boom, there it is. Right. Again, and this is all being tracked using React's state system here, right? These hooks. So here's this hook. So this is the state hook. Use state. And this is the ref hook, which is the use ref. So this allows us to create a reference. So our entire component now has access to the reference of whatever the heck you want to attach it to. You can attach it to anything. Heck, we could attach it to the p tags if we wanted to. Right? You can do whatever you want. Okay. So if you ever need to know anything about any component, you can always just use a ref and you get access to it, and then you can do stuff. In this case, when we get access to the input, we can get access to the actual data that somebody actually typed in there. Right? Okay, cool. Does that make sense, everybody? Are you guys cool with that? Okay. So once you add the extensions from React, here's a really cool thing that you can also see. It should pop up. Okay, it should pop up on this side. Click on more tabs. You'll now have access to something that says right here, components. Click on that. Okay. To refresh here. These are our components. So we have an app component and we have a shopping cart. So instead of, console.logging stuff, sometimes that helps. It's good to be able to see what the internal state of your React application is. So here, under shopping cart, under hooks, there's the props, right? There's the props, there's nothing there, that's why it's blank. Under hooks, it's not blank. We have two things. We have state and a ref hook. This ref is pointing to input, right? Because that's what we assigned it to, right? Over here, input ref, we're referencing this input, and React knows. The state is currently this empty array. React knows the state is currently this empty array. If we expand this, it just says, hey, it's empty. Right? We can manually add something in there if we wanted to. I can add a wrench. Right? If I wanted to, or something like that. I don't know. Okay? It's probably not a good idea to do it that way, but I mean, you could. So here we'll type in wrench. Okay, I'm gonna hit add and watch the right side. Boom, there we go. Okay, and I can also delete it. The state changed. Okay, so I can say hammer, wrench, saw blade, right? There we go, hammer, wrench, saw blade, hammer, wrench, saw blade. And I can start deleting stuff. Okay. Now notice I don't have to do it from my code because remember, when the state changes, it causes this to call itself again. It causes a re-render. And what are we doing here? Well, we're drawing the items. We're saying, okay, for all the items, we're going to map. That is, we're going to transform this item, which is just a bunch of text, into a p tag, a paragraph tag. So that's why we can do stuff like that. We can have data in here, like a wrench, let's say some nails, or whatever. And we can just, over here on the right side, we can just start deleting these stuff if we wanted to. And that's going to cause the shopping cart to re-render because the state has changed. React picked it up, right? We click these little buttons over here. It picked it up, and then this component gets redrawn, right? And that's why you saw that as I was modifying it over here using the React dev tools, it was reflected on the left side without any code changes that had to happen because it was all reflected based off state changes. See? Pretty cool, huh? You can do stuff like that. There's also a profiler. We have a profiler we can use. So we can start, we hit start profiling, and you can, let's say wrench, add tools, add. Okay, now we're done. Right? And you can see, different information here of things that you were doing. So like, how long did it take app to draw, whatever, and blah, 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 and all kinds of stuff. Okay. So you have the profiler there. The one we're going to be looking at the most is the components. Okay. Cool. Does anybody have any questions so far? None of this is confusing you. You guys are all getting this pretty good. You guys, no questions? Okay. Okay. All right. So the next our next goal is to is we want to be able to delete, like I want to delete wrench or tools, right? I want to be able to delete each one, or one at a time. I want to be able to delete a specific one. Okay, after I add it to my little shopping cart here. Okay. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, we're gonna need a button, right? We need a button next to each of these items here. Okay. So one thing you can do, okay, which is probably what I recommend, is so here we're going to wrap this. Okay. So I'm gonna do like this so it makes it easier to see. All right. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to take this, okay, and I'm gonna put inside a div tag. Okay. And in the very beginning, I'm gonna create a button here. I'm gonna put the minus sign. Okay. Here we go. Let's see. I'm gonna move this actually to here to inline it, remove this p tag, and the div needs the key. That's the root one, so it needs this index. Okay. I want the button next to it. There we go. That looks good. So when I say like measuring tape or something, there it is. Now I have these buttons. These are buttons. Okay, the little minus sign. Okay. There you go. Fresh start. Cool. Now what I want to do is when I click on the minus button, I want to delete that particular item. Now, how do I do that? Well, let's first listen for the click. So on click. Create our function here. So what is something that I can use in order to identify which particular item was clicked? Can anybody give me a suggestion? What's something that I can use to identify that a particular item was clicked? What can I do? What can I use? Because remember, there's not going to just be one button with the minus sign. There could be hundreds. So I need to be able to, narrow it down. Which item were we trying to delete? Does anybody have a suggestion? Index? Beautiful. Thank you, Brian. Let's try it. So let's say console.log index. Okay. Now remember, this button is this minus sign. Here, I'll just say delete. Something like that. All right. Now let's add a hammer. Say there's a delete button. So let's go to console, and when I click this, it says 0, which is true, right? That's the hammer is at the 0 index. Okay. So now I'm gonna type in I don't know, saw blade. Add. Okay. Now I want to click on saw blade. That's a 1. If I click on hammer, it's still a 0. Okay, cool. Okay, so we have something here. Okay, so Brian, absolutely correct. We have something here. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to delete an element from the array. Do we not? That's what we want to do, right? So how do we do that? Well, JavaScript has a way of doing that. It's using something called not slice but splice. So there's two ways. There's two S methods on an array: slice and splice. Okay. Okay. So what we need to do again, we need to mutate the state. But like I said before, you shouldn't touch the previous state. What do we need? We need a copy. So we're going to make a copy. Let's say const new items is equal to copy the old items. Okay, now we have an array with the new items. Now we say new items dot splice. Now what does splice do? Here, the 0 base location in the array from which to start removing elements. Removes elements from an array and, if necessary, inserts new elements in place, returning the deleted elements. So returns an array containing the elements that were deleted. So in splice is called a mutation. Okay, splice is called a mutation. So the reason why it's called a mutation is because it's actually going to change the internal array. Okay, it's actually going to change it. Versus something that's not a mutation usually is going to return a new version of that thing, but splice does not. So here I'm just going to say index, splice the index. Okay, it mutated the array. Now I just say set items, new items. Done. Okay, delete hammer. Okay. Oh, well, we gotta refresh this because the indexes. Okay. So I have hammer, add. We have saw blade, add. Cool. Remove saw blade. Gone. Remove hammer. Gone. Okay. Do that again. Hammer. Add that. Wrench. Add that. Gonna remove hammer first. And now everything's gone. Okay. So let's see what's going on here. So let's go to components. So let's go here. So refresh this. Components. Okay. Components aren't showing. Okay. All right, whatever. All right, we will figure what's we will find out what the problem is. All right. So one thing you can do is again you say console.log and hit items, and hopefully you can pick up what the problem here is. You say hammer add, or okay, so there's that item there. Here I need to log the index. So console.log index. Okay, so let's refresh this. Okay, so I'm gonna add a hammer. Add. Beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna add a wrench. Add. Okay, beautiful. I'm gonna click on hammer. Now everything is gone. Okay, everything is gone. Okay, so the reason why everything's leaving is because splice, if we look here, we need to tell it to just delete one. There we go, delete one. So that was not bad. So we have hammer, we add, we have wrench, we have add, delete hammer. That's just deleting the one. Okay. But we should be running into a problem. Is this no longer a problem? Nope, it's no longer a problem anymore. Okay, cool. There used to be a problem where the indexes was not a good thing to use, mostly because you would say, like, let's say you had 5 items and you did the 4th item, and then the 5th item will still have an index of 5, and so it would like be out of bounds. But I guess that no longer is a problem. So cool, we can use that now. All right, cool. Okay, so now we have a way of adding items. So hammer, it's a really good item. We have a wrench. We have a light. Then we start, I don't want the wrench, I don't want the hammer, I don't want the light. Gone. Index and an index plus 1 also works somehow. Yeah. Yeah, I don't, yeah, because here I forgot that you have this delete count. I think what happens is like so let's just put some random things. A, B, C, and D. If you don't, I forgot that if you don't specify something with splice, the second argument, if I hit B, it's going to delete from B onwards. Yeah, it deletes B from onwards. That's one thing I forgot. So just apply it a 1 to tell it, hey, only delete one item, and you're good to go. Cool. All right. There we go. There we go. There we go. Okay, so does anybody have any questions on that? So now we can add, now we can delete. That's pretty good. All right, so we think we have a little bit of time. So I want to mix the movies and the shopping cart together. And I'm not sure if we're gonna have enough time for that. What I want to do is I want to say, like, let's say it was like a movie rental service. So if you wanted to rent it, there would be a price of, let's say, $1.50 or something like that, price. Everybody likes Frozen, so it's a premium one, so it's $3. Space Jam, well, that's classic, so we'll say $2. The Hangover, price be, uh, yeah, I would say $1.50. Standard pricing. Star Trek, price $1.50. Law Abiding Citizen that we have here. So we have price $1.50. Inception. Price. It's a nice price for Inception. Yeah, I'll say $2. Indiana Jones. $2.50. I like that movie. Okay. And then let's say we want to pass it the items. Okay. Or how should we do this? We have our shopping cart. Shopping cart should just have the items that we put in there. So actually, we'll have to do this one next week. What I want to do is I want to draw the movies. And I want to be able to click on the buttons because let's say let's say it's like Redbox, right? It's like the interface for Redbox. Do you guys remember Redbox? You guys remember? Is Redbox still around? I really honestly don't remember if Redbox is still around. But if it is, and if you've used it, then you know what I'm talking about, right? You have a selection of movies. You tap on it and say, oh yeah, I want the Blu-ray, the DVD, whatever. It has like different prices. Then you have your little shopping cart, right? All the movies that you have, and then you check out, and then you're good to go. Okay? I want to build that. We should build that to practice state, drawing stuff, and then and all that stuff. So we'll actually, we're gonna move that to next week. Next week is just going to be all about building. We're going to be building. That way you guys can, through repetition, see how React works, and hopefully you guys can, do this on your own. So I'm going to write up an assignment, and I'm going to put it on the Discord, and it's going to be React based. So the assignment, I'll let you know, so you guys can start thinking about it, is going to be the following. So the project or the assignment is going to be two parts, just kind of like what we did today. So, or what we've been doing. We're going to have an array. Instead of movies, it's going to be books. So imagine you were like, working at a library. You're working on the library website. Okay? You're like, oh, I'm gonna use React. Like, okay, beautiful. So then you have an array of books, which has like the title, the author, the publication, and yeah, that's about it. Or and also let's say whether or not it's in stock for you to like check out the library, right? So I'll say yes or no, something like that, true or false. So what you're going to do is you're going to build something with React. You're going to build a component called book, just a book, not books, but book, that will be in charge of drawing the UI for a book. That's it. So how you display the title, the author, whatever, is going to be totally up to you, right? You can use a H2, like the nice headers, P tags. You can use a div, whatever you want. Okay, use whatever you want. Okay. So then you have that drawn. Beautiful. Then the next thing, the next part of the assignment is going to be so the next part of the assignment will probably be something where you have the movies, right? You have the movies, and you want what would be something good here? I think that'll probably be enough for the first assignment. It's just having the books, just having the books. Oh, I know what we could do. This would be interesting. So you create. I'll give you the data, an array of just books. I'll find some random book information. And then what you need to do is you need to draw the books. However, you need to filter them first. You need to filter it alphabetically. You need to do it alphabetically. based off, let's say, the title of the book. And if two titles are the same, then do it by, you know, say by the author or something like that. I'll come up with something. But it's basically going to encompass everything that we've done. So this entire week, we've done stuff like that. We talked about higher order functions, how we can filter, how we can sort. I showed you different ways that you can do, you can use a higher order function of sort on an array and how you can do that. So it's going to require you um, to look at the previous videos, and if you paid attention, you should be able to solve that problem. So I will give you an array of books, okay, an array of books, and then your job is to sort it based off some criteria, which I'll put in the assignment. And then you just draw that to the screen, already sorted. Okay, I think that's a good assignment. Now it'll probably take you all weekend to do. Okay, so hopefully that's a nice assignment. I'll have that assignment ready later today, and I'll post it in the Discord. Okay, so it's going to be a React project that you're going to have to do, and then if you want me to look at your project, hit me up on the Discord, and I'll answer. You can ask anybody. Corbin's, he's a React pro, so you can ask him, ask me, anybody. Just put a comment on Discord, and somebody will respond. You know. Okay. Cool. So yeah. Use Discord. I'll have the assignment. Reach out to me, Corbin. We have Victoria too. She can help you out too. So yeah. So hopefully you enjoyed today. I'll have the assignment ready, and yeah. If nobody has any questions, then I'll end it here. And yeah. So have a good weekend, everybody. See ya.